So how do you break up with your plan manager or support coordinator? And what we're about to talk about here really can be transferred across to most NDIS service providers. The first thing I want to say is that you can choose to break up with any of your service providers for any reason. Nothing has to have gone particularly wrong. You may have simply found a service that better meets your needs for where you're at because maybe life has changed a bit for you. It could be that there's just a weird vibe. Whatever it is, you can choose who your providers are, and you don't need like a super fancy bulletproof reason to change. So on that assumption that you have whatever reason that you have for wanting to change providers, how do you do that? Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is go back to the service agreement that you have with that provider, and you're going to flick through until you get to the cancellation policy. That is my cat using my other office chair as a scratch post, even though she has her own scratch post. Anyhow, flick through, find the cancellation policy. You're going to read that. Now, that cancellation policy usually says something like you need to provide written notice to that provider, which means you basically have to email them. That email does not need to be super specific. You do not need to give them a massive essay about why you're terminating services. You can just say, hey, this is me, like name, date of birth, and maybe like your NDIS number, and says, I am letting you know that I am formally terminating services as of this date. Now, some providers, depending on what they're giving you, like what the service is, will have some sort of a cancellation period. So they might need a couple of weeks. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that is time for them to prepare a handover to whomever you engage with next. If that is a support coordinator, that is time for them to prepare a handover, making sure that they've got everything up to date, that the records are done, that they have notified your providers, and that they have prepared essentially a warm handover to whoever you go to next. They can either give that to you directly, or you can provide them with your next provider's details, and they can provide it as long as they have consent. So that's how you can do that. Now, when it comes to plan managers, it's a tiny bit different. Generally speaking, they have a 30-day cancellation notice. That is generally for it's not really, as far as I'm aware, for a super specific reason other than to maybe get one more month's worth of billings out of your plan, but they don't necessarily need it. All they can do, like a week, 2 at the most, ask them to expedite it. They just need to release the funds so that you can transfer over to your new provider. Simple. And that's it. That's how you can do it in the most basic terms without needing to go into too much detail, because we don't want to be trauma dumping all of our stuff on other people when we don't have to, especially if we don't feel comfortable with them for whatever reason.